My name is Janice Toulouse. The title of the exhibition today is Anishinaabe Kwe. Anishinaabe Kwe translates as the human beings, and Kwe is woman. My work is, it speaks of the life of myself as a painter, as an artist, and as an Indigenous woman. My experience as an Indigenous woman, reflecting in my art, coming from a family who went to residential school, we were taken away, I was taken away as well, and we were just babies, my sister and I. So that would have been about 1957, 58. And we were, that is, I'm born and raised on Serpent River First Nation, on the reserve. And so that's my roots, that's where I come from. And I'm from a large family. Actually, my mother is from a chieftain family, the Shinwaks. And the Shinwaks are originally from Garden River, that means pine. Another side of my family is the Miawasages. That means sun coming through the forest, and they're from Serpent River. So this is where my origin is. And when we were young and taken away like that, so viciously from our mother, it broke my world, because I was a child of the forest, and I believed life was just beautiful and peaceful until that moment. How I could say being Indigenous, being Anishinaabe Kwe affects my art is it's like a whole storyline of my life that I lived. I can only tell my own life. I can't speak for all Indigenous people. This is what I lived. Being an Indigenous woman, we have lived through so much racism and sexism. You know, I can say it just takes a lot of strength to be alive today. The genocide, and not only the genocide, but what not often spoken about is ethnocide. And, you know, it's not only the loss of the life, but the loss of the spirit. And we had to work very hard to get our spirit back. I mean, it was always there, but we had to make it just glow. The first painting is titled Anam, Star Origins, and the next work is Homeless. And basically the longer title is Homeless in Our Own Lands. So I will first mention homeless, because that's in the context of how I did the work. I painted these in 2019, and it was in the south of France. This I was focusing on the Indigenous homeless, and I was imagining what it would be like to be wrapped up in a blanket in the snow, and I was feeling more and more a sadness, and looking at the origin. How did the homeless end up in the street? What happened to them in their lives? For Indigenous people, it's often due to residential school, and a lot who have been sexually abused by the priests and the nuns there, they can't heal from that. They haven't been able to find a way to live with it. So they try to drown themselves in whether drugs or alcohol, or they end up in the street, end up curled up in that blanket, freezing. And so I wanted to express that in this artwork. So the second work, the Anam, Star Origins, it was now springtime in the south of France, and I was still painting outdoors, but it was easier. And so the way I like to work sometimes in the large format is I'll put it up anywhere, on a barn, outdoors, where I can staple the work up, and I'll pull it on the floor, I'll work on the grass. It's very physical. It's like a dance. So a lot of it is movement where I'm pushing the paints and splashing, and it's really enjoyable. But it also takes a lot of concentration in order to bring it together as one complete art piece. I was thinking about the origin of, in our teachings in the Anishinaabe, our Ojibwe culture, is we have a teaching of the original story coming from the sky, coming from the stars, and descending to Earth, Mother Earth, on the back of a turtle. So I wanted to express to the viewer this incredible space of where we come from. I want to speak a bit about the film I made back in 1980. It's titled Waiting in the Forest, and it's a Super 8. I was a student at Concordia here in Montreal doing my graduate MFA. And the title of Waiting in the Forest came from a photograph by Edward Curtis. And it's an Indigenous man waiting in the forest, and he's wrapped in a blanket. And I was really inspired by the symbolism of the blanket. It has so many meanings for us. It starts from like the moment of birth, when you're wrapped in blankets, and then to the point where we were stripped of our regalia, and we were given these old gray blankets to wear and to cover up with, and at night in our homes. So to describe that film briefly, we went up to the mountain and with the Super 8, and I walked up towards that cross, the giant cross on Mount Royal, and I had some beads, and I took the beads and I laid them on Mother Earth, which is the earth, in the snow, thinking of the people. And then I put them back, and I looked up at that giant cross on Mount Royal, and silently was speaking to what that cross represents. In Christianity, you tried to destroy our people, the first people. Your church built those residential schools, and today we have survived that and thrived. But I wanted to be known to the world. And back then, 1980, I more than once stated this, talked about residential school. All my family went. I was lucky to say I didn't have to go because I was a baby, but the home they put us in, I refer to it as a residential school for babies because that's what it was. We survived this. And when as a young artist, when I would bring this subject up, and I remember I did an interview, I had an exhibition at Western Front in Vancouver, and I talked about that in the interview, and they were shocked. And people often didn't believe me. This didn't happen. So now we go from 1980 to 2021, where finally it was admitted of all the little children. I think I last read it was over 10,000, and it's ongoing across the country. Those hidden little graves, they're not even graves, the bodies buried, hidden outside those residential schools are being dug up now. So it's time to look at the realities and what has been done and how Canada became Canada Day. It's not something to celebrate. And I think if anything, it's an obligation for those who live here today and those whose ancestors from over 500 years profited from our lands. It's an obligation for their descendants to do something and make sure that we are honored, the First Nation.